Hey everybody, one of the last check-ins for our online 1102 course as we get right down to the end of it, although we still have a fair amount of time, relatively speaking, in terms of the length of our course anyway, but we are right down really to the last stages of finishing off the final paper, making sure that you have posted your paper for peer review so that first due date is passed. A lot of people wait until right up into the due date, so now you may have been in a group where you were sort of the only one, and even you might have been posting a little bit late, or at least right up until the due date. So what you might find is that people posted on time in your group, but you didn't really have time to respond yet. So now take the next couple of days before our final paper is actually due, and make sure you respond to those people in your group who ended up posting on time for that first due date for Unit 11. It's the golden rule really applies as far as peer review. Obviously, you want to get useful feedback on your paper in terms of not just areas for improvement, but strengths as well. It's good to feel that you have communicated to a reader sort of what you wanted to communicate, or that the writing you're doing is effective. And so you have to invest the time in giving that kind of feedback to the other people in your group. So it's a sort of, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That being said, though, that peer review has, as I'm sure you might have experienced, its limitations as far as if someone corrects something, for example, you don't need to take at face value that your version was wrong and theirs is correct, unless you know for sure that you just made a mistake, like a typo would be an obvious example, or maybe you had your works cited formatted but forgot to alphabetize the entries, something like that. That's easy enough to check and to fix. But for other kinds of suggestions, it's good to get that feedback because it makes you look at that area of your essay again. But in some cases, you may decide that either the way you had it was more effective than what your peer reviewer wanted, or that the advice your peer review gave was actually incorrect, or they might have misread something or miscommunicated something. So just be sure to edit your editors when it's all said and done. And hopefully, and the reason we do this in groups, is that you get at least two, readers for your essay. And if both of them notice that, the intro is confusing, or it's all good except this one paragraph seems a little off, that's a lot more helpful than just one person noticing that, because you do sort of notice a trend. Even if it's just two people, it's amazing how having two people focus on something rather than just one, it's not just sort of double useful or twice as good. It really is even more than that to get kind of a consensus feedback as far as some problem area within your essay. So anyway, check the due dates again. We're now into due date 2, obviously, for Unit 11. The main thing that you're doing is, if you haven't provided feedback to your group members, you're doing that, but clearly you're focused on your own essay in terms of incorporating any feedback you got, finishing up pieces that need finishing, double-checking basic things. So now's a perfect time to go back to that Unit 9 where the essay requirements are laid out. Be sure you've got the right number and type of secondary sources. And remember, anything that is not doing that part of the essay correct is unlikely to pass the essay and thus the class at this point. So it's very high stakes, but it's also very easy. I mean, it's stuff that we've been doing throughout the course. It's explained there. I've talked about it a number of times in these video things. There's examples throughout the course, so it really, I hope, works in your favor. I always suggest to submit your final essay a little bit before the absolute latest due date, just in case there's a problem with the file, or crazy stuff happens at the worst time. So that gives me the opportunity to get back to you and to make sure you get things submitted on time and in a format correctly that I can actually open up and grade. As far as any other pieces left for our course, obviously the essay is your primary focus, by far. But there are just a couple more pieces that I'll draw your attention to. A final reflection after you turn your essay in. This is pretty simple, very informal, just sort of like what you learned in the class type of a question. And it's interesting for me to see that, but I think it's also helpful for students, for you, especially in the format that we work in here, where you're always kind of moving forward and you don't have a lot of time to reflect on the bigger picture. This is one of those opportunities where, well, you have to for the assignment. But to really step back and think, like, how have I improved as a writer, or what have I learned that I didn't know at the start? We move at such a pace that we don't always have the opportunity to think in these broader terms, but it's good to do that at the end of a course like this. And then you'll also notice that there's a new link in our Blackboard menu here, and it's a course evaluation. So after everything else is done, don't worry about this until everything else is finished up. There's a little survey that you can take, and it's anonymous, so I don't see who said what or whatever. But it's pretty standard kind of stuff. What did you think was effective about the course or the teaching or whatever, your experience, taking the class, and are there areas for improvement? And so I really take that seriously. I like hearing what worked, because then I'll keep doing those things. And if you found that there were pieces that didn't work so well, then let me know about that. The only thing I would ask is that you be sort of realistic. I've had people give me feedback like, I wish we could have met in the classroom. Well, it ain't that kind of class, So just, given the format, just be realistic. But I am open to certainly making changes. And in fact, the evaluation for me is a little bit like the peer edit for you. If one person among the 20 or whatever that do the survey say that, we could have met in the classroom, well, clearly we can't, and that's one out of a whole bunch. Whereas if 15 people notice something that really does need improvement, then obviously that's something that I focus on. So I take them seriously, but I'm also, I experience the same kind of thing that you do as far as the peer editing. I do sort of edit my editors, if you want to put it that way. And there's no grade attached to it. It's purely for your benefit and then ultimately for mine. And obviously, as always, or maybe especially now that we're right down to the end of the course, if you have questions about your essay or really about anything else that's gone on through the course of the term here for us, now is really the time to be in touch. So as we wind things up, make sure you check these due dates again so you know when you're required to post that final paper. Aim to post it at least a day early, I would say. Be sure you're checking back to make sure there's not feedback like I couldn't open the essay, or it looked like you submitted something but there's no file there. Again, crazy stuff happens, but always at the worst possible time. Finish up the last couple of things as far as the discussion board and then the course evaluation. Make sure that you are conscientious about providing feedback for your group members who posted on time. And do that soon, obviously, because you'd like that feedback too, so that you can finish up your essay. So just be really conscious of how where the due date sits, your own time management as we get sort of the last little piece of our course here. And if you have any questions for me, now is definitely the time to be in touch. All right. Best of luck with your final essay.